Welcome to another episode of Jamming with Jason. Hey, today we are going to talk about changes. And no, that's not me. It's David Bowie. And so we're going to talk about his song Changes on this episode. So with that, let's roll that episode now. All right, well, we're going to talk about changes, or if you're familiar with the David Bowie song Changes, we're going to talk about changes. Okay. And I've been having Bowie on my mind for about 2 months now. Pretty much every time I wake up in the morning, it's a David Bowie song in my head. So I've been listening to a lot of his music, and so there will probably be several episodes about Bowie's music because for some reason that is coming through me right now and feels like what I need to talk about. And the song Changes is one that also has been going through my head, obviously, and I've listened to it a lot, but it's come up in some other parts of my life as well. So when I've been talking to some other people, that song has come into my head or has come into their head as we've, been talking about changes. And so, anytime that that happens, when you start to see the same thing in different places, there are synchronicities that are going on. And so I view this as a synchronicity, which is why we're talking about it today on the podcast. Okay, now changes, right? Oh man, we don't like changes, or at least most people don't like changes. I count myself in that as well. There's a lot of times where it's like, again, really? I have to change. I have to do it again, right? And, but I want to talk about why we should maybe stop seeing it as a negative and actually turn and embrace the changes in our life because you'd be happier, but also, we have to realize that change is, the only thing constant in life is change. Every day you wake up, every minute that you are alive, things are changing around you, your body's changing, lots of things are actually changing. And so I'm just proposing that instead of fighting the changes, maybe we turn and face them and embrace them. And I think that's a lot of what Bowie's song is about. And so I want to go through and, kind of like we do in a lot of episodes like this, go through and talk about, I'll read some of the lyrics and then we kind of talk about it and we just see where it goes. Again, it's imagine that it's you and me sitting on my porch and we're just talking about this song and trying to figure out, what meaning it has for us because again, it has certain meanings for me, and I will share those with you. But ultimately, it doesn't really matter what it means to me. What's more important is what it means to you. And so, as we go through this, obviously, I'm going to share because I can only share from my experience. But you need to, kind of tune in to yourself and figure out, what is it that you need to hear today? What is it about this song that you need to hear? What are maybe some changes that you need to make in your life that you've been resisting, right? Because ultimately it is about you and what you find valuable from this. But the fact that you're listening means that again, there's some synchronicity that you need to hear what we're talking about today. So let's get into talking about the song Changes. Now, I have to tell you, with this song, it is one where, because again, when music comes into my head, I just start listening to it and I watch the lyrics. I have an iPhone, and so in the Apple Music app, I can listen or read the lyrics while the song is playing. And I have to admit that this is one of those songs where I have been singing the wrong lyrics for my whole life. And so one benefit of actually looking at the lyrics when you're listening to the song is sometimes, we've been singing the wrong songs. And, I know there's been a Saturday Night Live skit about that was really funny back in the 80s or 90s. So, but anyway, we'll get to that uh, in the lyrics as we go through. So let's just jump in, okay? So at the beginning, he says, "Still don't know what I was waiting for, and my time was running wild. A million dead-end streets, and every time I thought I'd got it made, it seemed the taste was not so sweet." Now, I want to stop at that point because I think that, again, this is something that we all experience in one way or another. And what I mean by that is, a lot of times in life we are chasing something. We're running towards something, we want certain changes, we think, oh, when I have this, when I have that, when I'm in this kind of a relationship, when I have this much money, when I finally retire, okay? All those kinds of things that we say to ourselves. But now I want you to ask yourself a question. When you reach whatever that was, are you happy? Does it really give you what you thought it would, or is it like the lyric, it seemed the taste was not so sweet? Because I think a lot of times that's where we're at in life. We think when we have something, then we're going to feel different. But most of the time, having the things doesn't make us feel any different, right? And so I've talked about it on here before. It's part of kind of, peak performance and some of the things like that where people talk about, you have to be, you have to do, and then you can have the things instead of most of us think, well, when I have this, then I'll do this and I'll be that, right? And so we usually get it flipped around. And so, that works in our life so much of the time. We work really hard for something, but when we get there, the taste was not as sweet as we thought. Okay. And this is just, it's a normal part of life. And I'll tell you a little story. I used to do a lot of work in Louisiana. So I would go to the state of Louisiana to work a lot. And one thing that Louisiana has is really good food. Okay. Great food in Louisiana. I love Cajun cooking, jambalaya, all kinds of stuff from down there. And I remember, the first time or one of the first times that I went there, I had a dish called crawfish etouffee. Crawfish etouffee. So it was this, it's kind of uh, it's not really creamy, but there's rice in it, and I think beans and crawfish with this really lovely sauce. And I remember, I ate that crawfish etouffee, and I just thought, I am in heaven. This is wonderful. So good. And so I had it once when I was there, went about my business, other places, and I kept dreaming about crawfish etouffee. Oh, if I could just have crawfish etouffee again, that was so yummy. I remember how that tastes, right? And it was years between when I first had it and I had it again. And the second time I had it, the taste was not so sweet. Not that it was bad, but it didn't live up to the expectations that I had put on it by dreaming about it for so long. And I think that's the case in our life so much of the time, too. We dream about some of these things happening and we build them up, right? More than what they actually are. And so when we end up having that crawfish etouffee or whatever it happens to be, the money in the bank, the retirement, whatever it is that you're dreaming about, often the taste is not as sweet as we were expecting. So Lesson number one, right? Now let's get into more of the lyrics. And so the song goes on and says, so I turned myself to face me, but I've never caught a glimpse how the others must see the faker. I'm much too fast to take that test. And so I think what's interesting about these lyrics is again, he says, I turned myself to face me. And we've talked about this before on the podcast that so much of the time of life, is turning and facing the changes. It's turning and facing our fears. And a lot of those things are deep within us. And so often it's actually turning and facing ourselves and getting real, looking in the mirror, actually seeing ourselves and being honest with what we see, right? And when we do that, a lot of times we see that there are things that we need to change. Maybe there are things that we're not so happy about. We'd like things to be different. And again, that's okay. As much as we can be comfortable and present in the present moment and in a state of happiness and well-being, wonderful. But that doesn't, take away from us wanting to maybe make a better life for ourselves, create something better. We just want to make sure that we're also enjoying what we're creating along the way. But he also uses the word here, faker. And we've talked about, imposter syndrome before. And I think, so many of us feel like we're faking or are afraid that other people might see us as a faker. And, again, some of this is just part of being human, right? As we're trying to change, there's the old saying, you fake it until you make it. Sometimes as we're changing, we have to kind of pretend a little bit until those changes actually take place. And so there's nothing wrong with, as we're in our process of changing, for some of those things to maybe not be as deep-seated in our beliefs and as authentic as we would like them to be while we are going through the change. But that's okay, right? So that's the first verse, and then he gets into the chorus that you all know, ch 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 changes, turn and face the strain, ch ch changes. Don't want to be a richer man, ch ch changes. And what I think is interesting here again is he uses the term turn and face the strange changes, right? Because I think, often we maybe don't want to embrace change because we feel it's strange. We feel it's uncomfortable, right? Because we're not used to it yet. But as we've talked about before, the only way through fear is to face it and push through. The only way to get through change is to face it and push through, right? And so, a good lesson for us there in not trying to run away, but in standing up and facing it with our personal power. Now, the chorus finishes out by saying there's gonna have to be a different man, right? And so again, as he's turned and faced himself in the mirror and looked at it and said, you know what? There's got to be a different man. There's got to be a better form of me, and I have to embrace the change to make that happen. And it's the same with me. Again, I do the best I can every day. But again, when I look in the mirror, when I see how I react or respond sometimes, I know that I want to be a different man. I want to change, and I have to go through what's necessary to make those changes. And so, again, it's not to beat up on myself. It's just that constant striving for creating something better in my life. And then the chorus ends, time may change me, but I can't trace time. And so here's the embarrassing part for Jason, right? I told you earlier on that I've been singing the wrong words to this song my whole life. And here's what it is. I always thought it said, time may change me, but I can't change time. But that's not what it says. It says, but I can't trace time. I can't trace time. So I've sat with this word for a while, and it's caused me to delay in recording this podcast because to me it seems like a weird word to put in there, but there has to be a reason why he's using the word trace. Okay. And so I want to go through and just talk about that a little bit, at least what it means to me. But as I said, you need to determine what it actually means for you. Okay. So if we look at the word trace, which is again, it's a different word, but let me pull up the right screen here. So trace has it's both a verb and a noun. And so I'm just going to go through and kind of, talk about the definitions here real quick, and then we can see how we can tie this into the song. So, from a verb perspective, right? So, the action of what it means to trace something means to either find or discover by investigation, right? So, an example that they give, the police are trying to trace a white van seen in the area. They're trying to find it, they're trying to discover it, they're trying through investigation. But it can also mean to copy, right? So, like you trace something, you trace a map of the world onto a larger piece of paper, you trace a picture onto a page, right? So it can also mean to copy. So if we look at time from that perspective, right, we're trying to maybe find or discover time, but we really can't find or discover time. It just is, right? We can't find more time. We can only take time, right? And I think I've talked about this on the podcast before, where one of the lazy things that has crept into English is, well, I'll find time to do that. Well, you can't find time. Time exists, right? 60 seconds to a minute, 60 minutes to an hour, 24 hours to a day, 168 hours in a week. Time is finite in this linear construct that we're in, right? So you can't find time, you can only take time, right? You can make time or take time to do something, but you're never going to find any more time. So that could be one thing that he's talking about. He may be talking about wanting to copy time or to make more time. But again, we can't copy or make more time. The time we have is the time we have, right? Whether that's 80 or 100 or 200 years on this planet that we're going to live in this life, right? We can't really make more time. Now, it can also be a noun. And so let's look at it from that perspective. So, for the word trace as a noun can mean a mark, object, or indication of the existence or passing of something. And it can also mean a small quantity of something. And so, like trying to remove traces of an old adhesive or remove the traces of, something in your body. And so that's also an interesting way to think about time is that we really can't get rid of time either, right? I've lived a certain number of years of my life and I can't erase that time. There's certain things that I've done and certain ways in which I've used my time that I would love to erase and forget completely, but that also isn't possible, right? Because again, the person that I am right now is a result of all of the time and experience and beliefs and things that I've had in my life up until this point. So if I were to erase that time, I would cease to exist, right? And so we can't get rid of the time. It's just there, but it's in the past. So again, since it's in the past, it's no longer in our present. We don't necessarily need to dwell on it. I don't need to sit here and get down on myself for some of the ways that I wish I would have spent my time better. Instead, I can just be grateful that I had that time and it helped me to become who I am right now. So that's a little bit about Trace. And like I said, I've been singing that those lyrics wrong my whole life, but it gives me a different appreciation now for what he may be talking about. So if we go through some of the other lyrics here, I think there's some other lessons for us. I think that we can learn here is the next verse says, I watch the ripples change their size, but never leave the stream of warm impermanence. And so the days float through my eyes, but still the days seem the same. And these children that you spit on as they try to change their worlds are immune to your consultations. They're quite aware of what they're going through. And so I think, that verse to me has some very powerful messages in it. The first one being that, again, as I said, we can't trace time. Time changes us, right? But a lot of times it doesn't really feel like we're changing. The days seem to float, right? The days seem to be the same. And sometimes in our life they are. It's like Groundhog's Day. We get up, we do the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, right? But just because it doesn't feel like time is going on, just because it doesn't feel in our conscious awareness that we're changing much, we really are. And we're actually changing a lot. And I think it's interesting, that the last half of this verse talks about children that you're spitting on, right? Because a lot of times, especially in youth, we want things to be different. We dream, right? And as we get older, we tend to fight against the change more, right? As we get older, we think we're wiser and we tend to fight against the change. And so I think it's a reminder to say to ourselves, but to other people, when other people are trying to change, when other people want to change, we should encourage them. We shouldn't spit on them when we're trying to change, we shouldn't spit on ourselves either, right? We should be compassionate with ourselves. We should be supportive of us making the changes, of encouraging us, to go through and do what we need to do. I talk to myself. I encourage myself. Okay. I'm weird, maybe, but if I can't encourage myself, who else is going to? I can wait for somebody else to come, but that's probably not going to happen. And so I need to be there to encourage myself and to also encourage other people I know who are wanting to change. Because I think it's funny, they're quite aware of what they're going through. That children understand, their growth, their development, their play, all of these things. They know what they're doing, right? So again, we go through the chorus, but it's at the end, I think what's interesting is as he's closing out the song, he says this: pretty soon now you're gonna get older. Time may change me, but I can't trace time. I said that time may change me, but I can't trace time, right? And so first he says, oh, look out, you rock and rollers. Turn and face the strange changes. Pretty soon now you're going to get older. And so I think it's a reminder again for us that sometimes we think, oh, well, I'll change next week. I'll do it next year. I'll create that as a New Year's resolution and I'll start working on that a few months from now. But how much time do we really have? Right? Again, if you live to be 100 years old, that means you have 100 springs, you have 100 summers, you have 100 falls, you have 100 winters, right? How many have you gone through already? How many do you have left? We don't know, right? I mean, again, you can always assume that you're going to live to be 100 or 120 or whatever the number is in your head, but we're also not guaranteed that time either, right? Because people's lives are cut short all the time. When they've done what they need to do, it's time for them to check out and move on. Sometimes there's accidents or other things that happen in people's lives. And so, it's just a good reminder to realize that pretty soon now you're going to get older. And especially as I'm a getting older, right? You can tell from the whiteness of my beard. And if I showed you my hair, you'd see the whiteness of my hair. So I'm starting to get older too and realize that I still have a long life ahead of me, but it's much less than what it was before. Every day that we live is one less day that we have on this planet. And so, can we use each day? Can we make the changes that we need to? Can we turn and face the changes with courage? And because I know if you're probably like me, I still want to do certain things before I check out of this life. I still want to create certain things before I check out of this life. I still want to improve myself and become a better man before I check out of this life. And every single day, I have an opportunity to do that. And every single day, you have an opportunity to do that as well. The choice is up to you on how you want to do it, right? Are you going to turn away? Are you going to pretend that those things don't exist? If I ignore it, it will go away. That doesn't happen, right? A lot of us are taught that way or would like to believe that if we ignore it, it'll go away, but it doesn't, right? It just ends up coming back with more vengeance later on. And so the quicker that we actually address some of these changes and change ourselves, uh, the better we are too. The less suffering we have, the less suffering people around us have as well, especially if maybe some of the changes we need to make are in being more kind, in showing more love, in being more encouraging, in creating more than we're destroying, right? That all of those things not only makes us better people, but it makes the world a lot better place as well. So I'm going to take the challenge of each and every day to turn and face the strange changes that are coming in my life and push through them with courage. And so I hope you will join me in that as well. Whether you do, whether you don't is entirely up to you. But I can promise you, as I have made changes in my life, as I work through my changes, my life gets so much better, and yours can too. So, with that, I'm going to sign off for now from the changes until the next jamming with Jason session that we will see you on next week. Have a great week, and we'll see you then.